Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series finale of Locke and Key. A great series finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, we're picking up in the aftermath of last episode. My thought about, okay, they're going to use the creation key, which I wonder, did I call it that or not? I figured they weren't just going to call it the drawing key because it brings stuff to life. I might even said creation. That just seemed like the very befitting name. Sometimes the names are what you think they are, sometimes they're not. Either way, tensions and all that aside, I was like, well, I guess even if they were inside of Gordy's mind when he died, as we see later on, it wouldn't have they wouldn't have been able to draw a door, but he's hanging on, there's still that spark of light, and once he got that last drop of epinephrine or whatever, it ended up keeping him alive long enough. He was able to focus, and he literally made a door for him. Like, on some subconscious level, he knows they're there inside of his head, and he's trying to make sure they're able to get out. So he opened a doorway for them. Granted, they had to leave and find out about the whole cop situation. That was kind of complicated. Just like, we got to get out of here. And Gideon is trying to follow them, but Gordy puts up a wall to try and block him. Gideon manages to come out of the door, ends up killing the cops. But sadly, Sam is stuck on the inside. So he doesn't, I theorized what I thought his ending was going to be. It's still the same end result, but there's this moment of inside of Gordy's head, underneath the piano, he turns back into himself. And he just kind of smiles because he's finally able to let go. Like, for also, he can't completely make up for what he did, but to what he did to Rendell, he did make up by helping the Locke family, and that at least he can die knowing he did that. He did his best to make things right. So, but it's like, yeah, the moment Gordy finally died, held on just enough, they got out, but not Sam. But Sam would have wanted probably like to end things anyway. Like I said, he probably would have crossed the boundary to the well house himself. But when it was all said and done, when Gordy died, he died as well. So, but now they have to worry about Gideon. They've got the creation key. Anything you draw comes to life. So Kinsey and Tyler on the run. I love how they utilize this. Like, literally just draw a door, and then, like, on the other side of it, drew a lock and locked the door. And it's like, good thing none of these people are going to remember any of this. So that didn't stop Gideon, but they drew a motorcycle. Ellie and Rufus got to Josh. Josh coming in with the big save, ramming Gideon with a car. Gideon, obviously, is the demon inside him, so he's not going to get caught up in the sentimentality of it all. But it's like, hey, you're my ancestor. I mean, well, you're my descendant and all that, but yeah. Luckily, Josh rode out the way. I was like, oh, he's going to try and run you over with the car. But it's like, well, if he can in a process, sure. But he's mainly going after Tyler and Kinsey. But luckily, rode out of the way. It's like, that's a pretty powerful key. Once again, kind of plays into why Ellie probably made sure to leave that key where it was. Also, like, because Rendell probably couldn't be trusted with it. But also, like, that's a very deadly key, like being able to bring anything to life. I'm wondering, once again, because I think the comic book is still ongoing. No, I'm completely wrong. I didn't realize, for whatever reason, like I said, I might have been conflating it with Umbrella Academy, but no, the Locke and Key comic ended years ago, so this might be following how the comic actually ended. Like I said, I'm sure people probably corrected me last episode, but it's like, yeah, I was still under the impression, but it's like, yeah, it ended back in like 2013 or something like that, I think I was reading, so either way, so they probably diverged a bit from the original comic in any shape or form, but yeah, at the very least, it is like straight up done. So, that's probably also why it is only 3 seasons, because it's probably all the story that's left from the comic, all the story that, either way, putting all that aside. The reason why I was wondering, like, what if the comic was still ongoing, because I was wondering whether or not that is potentially the last key in the series, or whether something else, or because some of the keys are specific to the show, some of the keys are a combination of keys from the comic, so there is that. So I don't know if that's something straight for the I feel like that could be something from the comic, as powerful as it is, and maybe they utilized it more in the comic than they do in the show, because they only just got the key, and got to use it this episode, the final episode. So, either way, putting all that aside, they rush back to Key House, and now they have to determine, like, well, what are they going to do? They can't get inside of the Harley Quinn chest. My thought was, and I'm wondering, could you have done this? Could they, well, You can bring things to life, but I don't know if they, because even if they brought the Harley Quinn key to life, I was like, oh, couldn't you just draw the Harley Quinn key? But I'm like, it is, I don't know, it is magic, and you're making, like, it magically makes everything, yeah, they were, like, on a bike that just, like, magically, so I'm like, I don't know if that would have worked. Once again, they found another route to it, but still. But it's like, how do they go about stopping Gideon, who is on his way? Lo and behold, their plan is to push him into the well. I mean, I think I always kind of like forget the stipulation of like, yeah, he is an echo. Like I kind of like somehow keep forgetting that from time to time. I guess because I didn't rewatch season 2. I guess in my head sometimes I would kind of like conflate it. It's like, oh, it's a time travel thing, but it's like he was sealed away or something. It's like, no, he died. They just used the echo key to bring him back to life. I keep forgetting about it because he was hung or whatever, right? Either way, putting all that aside, they end up trying to push Gideon in with like a forklift that I think they ended up drawing, but he is a demon, so he held on for dear life. And it's like, yeah, even if Tyler had like grabbed him and anything, he wouldn't have been able to stop that superhuman strength. So the fact is he's getting pushed along, and he ends up breaking the machine, breaking off a piece of the arm, and breaking down the well house. And I'm curious, like, even if they had drawn, like, I mean, they would have had to take the time, but like, if they could somehow draw the wheel, could they draw that again? Would it still had its same properties? That's also, once again, the conversation about the Harley Quinn key. Would it still had its properties? Because it's, yeah, you're making a key, but it doesn't have the demon properties that give it its magical ability. So I was like, oh, so no killing him that way. So it's like, well, what are you going to do? Using the creation key, Kinsey made a little door in the Harley Quinn chest and got the alpha key out. Now all they had to do was finish Gideon, which they do. But it's also like, well, he is an echo, so, and they end up pushing him into the portal, and it's like, well, he's not dead. There's always chance another demon can possess him. Like, yeah, the demon inside of him was like the god, but who knows what other demon's going to ultimately end up possessing him. Because that's an interesting thing. Like, they'll probably have, like, because it possesses Gideon after everything Gideon went through, like, we haven't really covered, well, because Lucas remembered everything he did while he was like while he was like possessed by the demon. So Frederick would have remembered everything too. So any demon that possesses him in that other world would remember everything too. So, but then the hole doesn't close. I'm like, oh, that didn't close. So I'm like, what are you going to do? And then it's like, yeah, but the hole got smaller. Gideon had 2 keys with him. Tyler throws in the head key, which Bodhi's like, whoa, what the hell are you doing? It's like, the keys, we have to throw them in, which I'm like, I figured that was going to be the end result, but it's like, yeah, quite literally, because the hole is bound by all the demons that are still kind of here, so it's like, we have to get rid of the keys, and the rest of the family's in agreement except for Bodhi, because for Bodhi, it's like, no, the keys have done good. It's like, they're good, like, magic and stuff. It's like, yeah, but is magic all good? I mean, magic's the reason why Dad died, and Eden, Jackie, Joe, Gordy, like, so, I mean, everyone at the end of season 2 who died because they got turned into demons by Dodge. Yeah, like, there's been a lot of death and destruction brought about by these keys. Like, yeah, but, and it is that conversation of, and even Nina says, like, they are kind of inherently evil. They want to be used, and they corrupt people. It's like, even look at your dad. He couldn't steer away from it. So all of them, yeah, there's good that comes with the key, but yeah, there's also bad too. And ultimately, Bodhi, he's like, I guess I'm outvoted. They're like, we want this to be a unanimous decision. It's like, so what do you want from the keys? Because the keys can't even bring their dad back. Because yeah, they could use the time shift key, but even then, he would eventually pop back into place. So Bodhi's like, I just want to do it one more thing, and after that, I'll be settled. And so they go back to a memory, like, the rest of them are out of the house, and they go and see Rendell, and they kind of explain everything. It's just like, yeah, now, like, this is a part of his life he could never fully share with his family, but now he gets to talk with them about it. Like, yeah, like the key, it's like, right. As she, Nina's saying, like, God, who knows what else happened before I got the memory key, and, using the keys. Kinsey was like, yeah, I went to Coachella and back in the day or something like that. It's like, yeah, because I think that was when she was using, like, the Anywhere key or something like that. And Bowden's like, see, the keys aren't so bad, but Rendell commends his children. It's like, you guys are doing something I couldn't even do. I could never bring myself. I wanted to try to, like, distance myself from the keys. He's even saying that he never wanted this for his family. That's why he distanced himself so much from it, because he never wanted them to have to deal with just this complicated thing. Like, none of them, they hid the keys. They never got rid of the keys because they, it's like, right. They could have found a way to probably get rid of the keys back then, but it's like their choices back then influence and affect it so much now. And so he talks about he wishing that he had, like, you guys had the courage and strength to do something I couldn't. He's like, yes, the keys are magical, and yes, they made me feel special. Because Bodhi was like, yeah, didn't you miss feeling special? He's like, yeah, but the problem is I spent so much of my life still trying to hold on to that feeling, but that feeling of specialness meant nothing in comparison to the time I spent with you guys. So, and he's so proud of his family for doing what they did. Like, and Tyler saying that line, the past is always with us. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because remember, that was a story that Tyler and Kinsey both got two different versions of that story. Like, Kinsey got, like, the more friendly, happy, optimistic story, whereas Tyler got the more realistic, like, pessimistic story. And Tyler saying that line of the past is always with us, it's like he learned that lesson from his dad, and it's like, it's with us. Like, just because everything that's happened, it'll always stay with us. You will always be with us, even if we're gone. And it's like, and the sad thing is, Rendell won't remember this. They can't change anything for him. But in the end, he's like, yeah, I might not remember it, but you guys will, and that's what's important. And I thought that was such a beautiful thing all around in that regard. So, and them hugging one last time, it's like being able to be a family again. Knowing that no matter, he might not know. Maybe they told him about his future, maybe they didn't. He knows that he's not there, so they must have explained some things. But at the very least, he knows his family's okay because they have each other, and he's so proud of them. And I thought that was beautiful, having that final moment. I'm glad, once again, it's not just a Bodhi, it was the entire family. I figured it would be. They all needed that. And so they toss in every key, getting a little bit of a, instance of the first time a lot of those keys were used. We got some of those flashbacks. So, and then they toss in the last key. I believe the last key was the Omega key, very befitting. So the portal ends up closing. Oh, and they made sure, at first they were like, they did Kinsey and Bodhi. At first I was like, wait, are you locking their memories or something? Like, no, the memory key doesn't work like that. Once again, we never even got the acknowledgement of what we know, that was it the flower key? There is a key that let them take people's memories like they did Duncan, so... But there's also the memory key that lets you keep your memories. And I was like, right, that's what they're doing. Making sure that Kinsey and Bodhi remember everything. Because it will complicate things. Like, some of these memories will get, like, they need to be able to remember everything they went through. Because if they don't, they won't even remember this memory with their dad. So they want to be able to keep that forever, too. So all four of them are able to keep that. So they end up... getting rid of all the keys, and the portal completely closes. And I thought that was a beautiful way to kind of wrap things up. And then, we see them all at the splattering too, and everyone's asking questions. And there's even, like, someone had asked, like, what about Sam? Like, isn't it kind of weird you put him in the credits? It's like, this crab monster can get redemption, right? So why can't someone like Sam, especially after everything he did for their family? It's like, right, he was a trouble kid who was taken advantage of, and he admitted what he did, and he couldn't completely make up for what he did, but he tried, and he helped them in the end and sacrificed himself. So I thought that was kind of a beautiful thing, despite everything, to kind of tribute to him in that regard. And obviously talks about, like, oh, you're going to do a Splattering 3 or not? And obviously Scott's showing up, and I'm like, oh, I love it. Because I think it was his character. He's like, yo, not even like a off-screen death or anything like that. So obviously Scott and the other Savinis won't remember things because they never got the memory key. But for Scott, he looks at it in a beautiful way of like, yeah, like we captured magic on film. Whether or not we'll ever remember that, that can never be taken away because that will always be there. It will always be captured with the splattering. So it makes it even more special. So, and obviously there's no one in the UK like the Savinis nor Kinsey. So, but Kinsey's like, yeah, I could always do like a foreign exchange program or something like that. And it's like, oh, like on my side of the pond or something. She's like, oh, is that a good idea? He's like, no, there are good things, there are great things, and he's like, on a whole other level type of thing is what is between you and me. So them finding their way back to each other at the end too, I like that. I'm happy in that regard. Even Tyler and Carly are good. They're kind of rekindling things. And, because I think it's this beautiful thing of like, yeah, they no longer have a magic, but everyone finding their way forward past this. Josh and Nina, even Bodhi being more okay with the Josh and Nina thing. I even love Brian. Like, so anything happened while we were going? And it's like, oh yeah, I got attacked at the History Museum or whatever. My car was stolen. He's like, I get the test drive stuff. And Bodhi's like, no, I'll go with you to make sure you don't get swindled. So Bodhi's warming up to him and stuff like that. So everything is working out like it should. And I thought that was beautiful. And Nina saying that obviously Duncan will always have a place here. It's like, no, we're not going to make a guest house for you. It's like, he's like, no, but Josh might want to make that man cave. He's like, no, this will always be your home. You're always welcome here. Like, and every time you stop by as often as possible, and I think that's beautiful. Obviously, it's going to be an adjustment because obviously Josh doesn't remember magic, doesn't remember everything that happened because he can't remember magic. But, Nina's like, it's for the best. It would have been awkward, all the questions that would have been asked afterwards. And as I had that adjustment to that, because eventually Jamie's going to get older too, and she won't remember magic either. So they're going to have these people in their lives that won't remember magic up to a certain point, but they always will. And it's beautiful in a way that it's like, right, the Locks will always remember magic. Duncan, Nina, Tyler, Bodhi, and Kinsey. So it kind of started with the Locks, so for it to kind of end with them being the only ones that remember magic was a thing in this world, it all kind of comes full circle in that regard. I even love coming full circle because I don't remember the line, but I'm assuming because of it was a little, do you still think it kind of looks Norman Batesy? He's like, no, it turned out to be a lot Norman Batesy. And Bodhi being like, who's Norman Bates? He's like, don't worry about it, dude. But it's like, yeah, it is kind of crazy. Like, obviously it was unfortunate circumstances that brought them here, but it brought them so much more connection to their family circumstances, a connection to their dad and his friends, and the fact is that this became home to them. And it's not just them. Ellie decided to go back to teaching. I guess after everything with Gordy, she's finding a way to move forward past everything with the keys finally going, and she at the very least has the memories of it. Rufus probably will eventually end up forgetting too. I don't know if he's quite 18 or not, but he would end up forgetting magic. And even him finishing his story, and she's like, oh, did they find their way back home? And he's like, they kind of, the adventure thing of they realized at the end of the day they were home all along, And Ellie getting back at the track meet, the track team, and being welcomed back so wholeheartedly. There's even the Gordy Shaw Theater. I thought that was kind of a beautiful tribute in that regard. And it is just this beautiful ending that, obviously everyone's kind of going their separate ways. Tyler's going back to go on a road trip with Carly, and it's like, well, Nina's like, are you going to invite Carly? And he's like, maybe. It's like, and Kinsey's like, no, I already did. It's like, what? Yeah, me and her text. We're cool like that. So I thought that was kind of nice. And then Bodhi stops for a second. He's like, do you guys hear that? And they're like, what? He's like, absolutely nothing. I was like, at first I was like, is he playing with you? And the moment it kind of leans on the door, I'm like, are we going to find out? And the little singer at the end, you hear the whispering, there's still a key here. So I like open-ended endings like that where it's like, it's not completely done. because my theory, you know, if I'll really quickly talk about it, is I was under the impression like maybe if Key still exists, that we'd have like Bodhi or someone's like maybe it's an older Bodhi coming here with his family and his kids or whatever discovering the keys or something like that, and kind of showing like, but this can kind of be in that same vein that there are still keys out there that maybe the Locks, maybe like Duncan and them were never sure, because yeah, they threw in enough keys to do that, but maybe there's a thing of maybe there's a key that no one ever knew existed that they hadn't found yet. Because to be fair, the hole was made with these keys, these particular keys, with the exception of the creation key. So throwing in one more probably would have been enough to like close it completely. But there's a key that even Gideon and the others were never aware of. Once again, like that door, like that world is always there and Gideon's there, but there is no alpha key, but who knows what this new key would have done. But like I said, just leaving things open-ended enough to be like, whether it's these Locks or future generations finding that key, leaving that open-ended enough to be like, yeah, magic hasn't completely disappeared. It's still here to some extent. And there's one key, God knows how many others might still be, what other secrets the Locke House might still have. I mean, Key House. I'd say Locke House. Key House. So I just thought in general that was a beautiful way to kind of wrap things up. And once again, like I was kind of under the impression, once again, that the story was still ongoing comic book wise. So I don't know, because I read up on some of the differences between the comic and this. Obviously, they made different adjuncts. I think it might be one of those things almost like Preacher, where it's like you did like the broad strokes, but then like you kind of did your own things in some other regards and stuff like that with some of the characterizations of the characters, but also maybe just some of the storylines in general. But I've thoroughly enjoyed this series. As someone who had never read the comic, maybe people who've read the comic feel otherwise. I know I've heard some people like they think the show was okay, but like they like the comic better, obviously. But I think that kind of gives you that experience of like, right, that there's two different mediums. Like you saw the adaptation, and you can read the comic and see like what was different, what was similar. It kind of presents that type of situation with any adaptation. So I've thoroughly enjoyed this series, being able to see this kind of like magical wonderment with kind of a little tinge of like a horror fantasy element to it. So, and I think this was kind of a beautiful ending all around. Obviously, there was a lot of sadness. You know, it wasn't like all completely happy ending to some extent, but there was a beautiful nature to it. Like I said, just them as a family fully together again, being able to give a proper goodbye to their dad, because they were robbed of the chance to actually say goodbye to him, and now like he gets to also share in that moment. He won't remember, but he gets to share that moment with them of like oh, this thing about myself that I kind of hid from my family, like the loneliness of being the only one who knows about magic, because even his brother didn't remember magic anymore either, so he was the only one in his family who could really remember all that, and now being able to share it with his family, and knowing that even despite it all, they're going to be okay, that they're making the tough choice that even he couldn't make. He was proud of each and every one of them. So I just think that was just, like I said, it's a beautiful element all around. So like I said, just a beautiful series finale as a whole. Like usually with these type of situations, to everyone involved, cast, crew, in front of the camera, behind the camera, thank you for bringing such a wonderful and delightful show. I say delightful, obviously there's a lot of messed up stuff, there's a lot of heartbreak, there's a lot of death, there's a lot of blood, but being able to bring this, horror-esque fantasy to us, I thoroughly enjoyed, and I really appreciate it. So to everyone involved with this series, I wish them the best in their future endeavors, whatever they may be. And so we're getting to that point where it's time to, close this out. So really, that's all I wanted to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.